even by next year. Armed forces is just something that is good to know, and something that is, essential to understand the deeper levels of gender equality in our society. It's an extreme case, but it's one of the most um, uh, the most gender unequal part of the Indian society, or any society for that matter, and it is good to understand how it impacts our lives. So, equity in inheritance laws. So, what are we looking at here? Um, and going back, I just want to go back to the Indian Constituent Assembly and help you understand how this law came into being and why it is where it is today. So, all of you, I'm assuming, know Vijayalakshmi Pandit. She was Jawaharlal Nehru's sister and one of the foremost voices in our independence movement. And she was also very, very popular as an international icon. She was the first female Secretary General of the United Nations and multiple other ambassadorship positions to her name. But the thing is, when Vijayalakshmi Pandit was part of this was much before Indian independence. What happened was her husband passed away in prison, and she has two daughters. So when her husband passed away in prison, what happened was, according to the British laws that ruled us at that point in time, all of her husband's property went to the next male kin, which was his brother. And as a result, she ended up literally going out in the streets. No inheritance to her name, no property to her name, very little money to her name, and very little means to take care of her kids. So this directly influenced how she, Nehru, and others thought about inheritance laws in our society. And a direct result of that again was the Hindu succession law, which tried to ensure that property would be given, inheritance would be given to men and women equally. They were not very successful at that point in time. There were a lot of debates around it, and have succession laws that differ according to religion made it a big issue. But what happened in so uh, what eventually happened is that the way women inherited land, the way women inherited property was impacted directly. So the average Indian land rights is only around at 12.9%. Only 28.3% have said that they own land alone or jointly. And if you see the infographic on the site, you will see the number of people who head the households who are engaged in holding a property or this thing. So why does this matter? A woman holding a woman holding property means that she has the ability to dispose of the property and earn money for herself. A woman who does not have that ability to do so is automatically turned out. One of the examples that I have read recently in the newspaper is of this woman who was given about a tenth of her father's property as dowry, and she went on to, but she didn't have any part of her father's property. And, she got married, and eventually, when she was widowed, her inheritance was just the dowry part, which was spent, for buying a house, for buying a vehicle, for whatever reasons it might be. And she eventually ended up destitute and without a home because she had no right in the property, either from her father or from her husband. And this impacts how poverty affects women. It directly impacts how women end up being more on the power men. It affects how much women are obliged to men and come under the control of men because of the non-ability to own a piece of land, or to say that they directly own this piece of land. Part of this was also they tried to rectify it through the inheritance of 2005, tried to rectify this by saying that women have equal right to inherit property from their fathers, but it didn't go far enough. So what happened is that very recently in 2020, a judgment was passed saying that a woman was entitled to equal rights in a father's property, even if he had passed away before 2005. So if a father has 4 kids, of which 3 are men and 1 is a woman, the wife, if she is surviving, and the 4 kids all get equal, they all have an equal claim to the land if he does not leave a will behind. This is, of course, very specific to the Hindu Succession Act. It is not specific to other religions. Other religions have other succession acts of their own to dictate how property is divided. But this went a long way, because at this point, even women whose fathers had passed away before 2005 and who had been denied the right to property by their brothers or by their families, could go back and file a case saying that they demand an equal share in the land of their fathers. So what does this mean? Say, for example, take a place like Haryana or somewhere where there's a Punjab, for example. A woman who has the right to say, 10% of a father's land can potentially sell that land for a lot of money given land prices today. So it ensures that women has the freedom to earn. Women has the freedom to own that piece of land and to make a living for herself, even if there is no other means of making that living. This is what they talk about when they talk about equity. You are providing women, our laws have provided women with all the steps that is necessary to take care of themselves and to put themselves at a place where they are equal or near equal to women. It's going to take a long time for every woman who has been denied property to actually get that property back. But this goes a long way, and it's something that future generations can make use of completely. A dowry is, as it's one of the most obscene parts of our culture, and a lot of people are saying that dowry, we don't want dowry when we get married, or dowry is illegal under Indian law, so we are not going to follow through on the system. But a woman earning a property that she is owed is not something that is illegal, and something that can be demanded, and a much more legal way to ensure that equality within the family is this thing. So this is one of the ways in which our laws ensured equity, in gender equity. There is still a long way to go, and that is part of it is also requires women to step up and demand their share when it is being denied to them by their family or whatever. So coming to the next part of it, equity in the workforce. One of the things this pandemic has showed us is how unequal our workforce is when it comes to gender. One of the many numbers that have been coming out is the number of women dropping out of the workforce for whatever reason. The number of women employability index has gone down a lot, which essentially means that the number of women who could potentially be employed is really high, but the number of women who are actually seeking out jobs, who are staying in the job, has dropped down. People are still not sure why that is, and that is something that they're trying to figure out. And one of the reasons that has been given is that the stresses that the pandemic has added by way of housework, by way of taking care of sick people in the house, or by way of taking care of childcare in the house, has all fallen on women disproportionately, and that is one of the reasons why women have dropped out. And what makes this even more almost the situation almost desperate is that the gender pay gap has already increased by so much that people are saying it would take nearly 137 years for the gender pay gap to narrow, to become almost equal. And that is definitely not in my lifetime, and for the most of us here, definitely not in our lifetime. So possibly our great grandkids or somebody down that line will, millennial, whatever, ABCD, probably might be able to earn equal pay. But it is important to understand what we mean when we are talking about the gender wage gap. A woman is paid 34% less than men for performing the same job with the same qualifications. All of you who are going to be graduating from here and looking for a job, under the worst circumstances, you're going to be paid about 84 cents to the dollar. Every woman is going to be paid only 84 cents to every dollar that a man earns. What does this mean? Over a period of time, it accrues, and you're potentially a good engineering graduate with a high performing job is potentially looking at close to $1.2 million of pay loss, because of being a different gender. 1/3 of the women who graduate are not easily considered for top management for a variety of reasons. A lot of it is because of the idea that they will be unable to do the job, or they will not be they are not suited for the job, in spite of the fact that there is no actual evidence to prove either one of it. 46% of the people who work believe that a woman will quit after maternity leave, but only 90% data shows that less than only 90% of the women quit for reasons other than maternity. And this is something that is going to deeply impact how women who are coming into the workforce are also being paid, in spite of the many things that have been put into place to make sure that this wage gap is reduced. So under Indian law, both men and women are eligible for equal pay. Under the Indian law, both men and women cannot be discriminated against by way of for the job that they have both applied to. But the truth of the matter is, this does happen. And what can we do to ensure that this equality in the workforce is something that is maintained? This is something that, equity by way of law goes only so far. There is much more needed for the people, the private companies and the companies that we work with do to reduce the gender gap. So what can we do to reduce the gender gap? We need to, I'm sorry, this is, so what can we do to reduce the gender gap? One of the things that is constantly being asked of women these days, the women who go into the workforce, is to raise their voices. When and this is applicable to both men and women. It's not something that only women need to do. Men can be a part of this conversation too. Be aware of the salaries that are being paid. The human tendency going into the first job is to estimate ourselves, is to think that we are not, that the job is something that is a privilege, and always under for a lower pay. Be aware, as in, do research. If you're going to go in for a work in a startup or in an engineering technology company or anything, understand what the salary, what kind of salary being paid to everybody, and not just the women, for men and women. If you have seniors already in the workforce, ask them how much they are being paid, and see if that pay can match. You can demand the same pay for yourself. Ask questions, ask your seniors questions, ask the people in the company questions. When you're being interviewed by the HR, ask the HR questions about how men and women are being paid. Is there an equal pay standard within the company? Ask them questions about what kind of provisions do they have for maternity holiday, parental holidays. Don't ask for maternity holidays, ask for parental holidays, so that you can be assured that both the men and the women are going to be taking the same amount of break, so as to not create that kind of discrimination within the company itself. Know your worth. As an engineering graduate, or as an MBA graduate, or as a business management graduate, this is how much you are worth. And that worth does not depend upon your gender, but rather that the kind of work that you can do and the kind of knowledge that you bring into that environment. So just knowing these and demanding these again and again in every company that you work for will ensure that you have a standard, you are respecting the amount of work that you're putting in, and you're also demanding more of the companies themselves when they are giving you the job. And this is how equity builds into the pay, builds into the workforce and helps in reducing the pay gap. Companies do things only if their workers demand this of the company. And this is something that is being followed in my company too. We are open about conversations about finances. We talk about a lot of things to our friends, right? I mean, within the company, or equality and diversity within the company in general, but it is also to ensure that the company is as successful as you want it to be, because company success means your success. It's just as simple as that. And it's to also make sure that there is everyone's voice is heard within the company. If it's something that happens in your class too, I mean, if you see women being interrupted more by men, step up and say, hey, let her talk. If she has an opinion, let her bring her opinion to the table, kind of thing. So see if this can be done. The last one that we're going to go into is equity in armed forces. This is again a topic that I have been very passionately talking about in the past, and I like to think that I would have been part of the armed forces if it had not been for the fact that I have flat feet, and there's this thing of discrimination with flat feet. It's easier to change that idea than to allow the armed forces to allow women in as part of their this thing, cadre. So, but the thing is, if women make up only 0.56% of India's 1.4 million army personnel, so in numbers, the total number of men, including Army, Navy, and Air Force, comes to like less than 6,000 of 1.4 million army, close to 2 million armed people, and then less than 6% is less than 6,000 is women, which is quite pathetic for many reasons. One of the main being that a disproportionate amount of pressure is being put on the men to serve and protect our country, when women are more than willing to step up and do the job, or be part of that, and to share in that burden, but are not being allowed to for various reasons. And one of the primary reasons, and armed forces in general has had this very masculine and sexist way of seeing the world. Be it the police forces, or be it our movies, they have constantly fed into this notion that the armed forces or the police force is this masculine environment, and women cannot survive in that environment. And one of the people that was being interviewed recently said, if women can, alongside men, climb Mount Everest, climb Kanchenjunga, dive into the ocean and fly to the international space station, to the moon and wherever. So saying that women can't be part of the armed forces is kind of ridiculous, and it's just part of a inbuilt bias and prejudice against the idea of women being serving there, rather than any lack of ability within the women themselves. So what is this equity? What is this gender inequality in the armed forces? Women have been part of the armed forces, the colonial armed forces, then the Indian Army since 1888, roughly speaking. They used to serve as medical professionals earlier, and sometime near independence, we all know about Subhash Chandra Bose's army and how he had a Jhansi regiment filled with women. And eventually, once India became independent and a republic, women have been serving as part of the Short Service Commission, which is roughly 5 years without many of the benefits that the men have to serve permanent commissions, and without any of the retirement benefits that men have. So yeah, women can't be part of the army canteen and cannot partake of all the goods and services as part of the army canteen and everything. But there are exceptions, which is the legal, educational, and medical wings, which we have women. But again, they are not as long as the men. They don't serve for as long as the men. But this has been changing recently. How has that been changing? We all saw the Republic Day parade where the women's regiment served, where the women's regiment marched, and we've all also heard about border security forces and paramilitary forces, and women have been part of this force within to battle the Naxals and as part of the border security force. But one of the things that happened really recently, that September 2015, was that the court ruled that permanent commission needs to be given to about 10 streams within the military forces. And the thing is, the same selection criteria will apply to the men. So this is called a gender-neutral selection criteria. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. The same kind of selection criteria will apply if you're going to be part of the armed forces. And then they've also said that there is a possibility of combat in the future. Women already are allowed to fly fighter jets, and to the Navy and the Air Force are far ahead of the Army itself. But hand-to-hand combat, or whenever that happens, there is a possibility of women serving alongside men, part of the armed forces. So why is this important, and why is this one of the more difficult parts of this equity thing? Though the court has allowed women to be serving in these streams, allowed women to be a part of the Indian Armed Forces, there is the pipeline of women applying to the armed forces and the pipeline of women applying to become a part of the armed forces is really, really small. And why is that? Because one, they are not given the same kind of encouragement and the same kind of resources at the school and the college level to become a part of the armed forces. There is a lot of society prejudice against women joining the army, any of the armed forces for that matter, and the kind of resources that you need. Like, say, for example, men have the NCC, NSS cadet. They go into they become a part of the cadet. They go into the military college. They learn, and then they graduate from these colleges. The same pipeline for women is often there is a lot more barriers to that in that pipeline, and the amount of societal barriers is also high, and that is something that needs to be changed slowly. So even information is at a premium here, so that also needs to change to ensure that more women are given the ability to join. And India is one of the last few countries that will be allowing this. The US, the UK, almost all of the Western countries, Israel, Pakistan, almost all of them have women as part of their armed resources, and India is one of the last few. And sexist ideas like what will happen if a woman gets kidnapped by the enemy? Treat them the same that you treat the men. Having a man being kidnapped by the enemy is clearly as bad as a woman being kidnapped by the enemy. Yes, there are other hazards, but it's something that you need to deal with as and when you get there. And these ideas of equity and equality can start coming becoming a part of the law and becoming a part of our daily routines and our daily lives only if we have more conversations about this, and only if we start working towards reducing these ideas of inequality within our minds. Um, so, any questions here? Anything that anybody wants to discuss? Thing that you have.
Ma'am, I have questions. Ma'am, I have few questions.
Yeah.
Can we have the discussion towards the end so that I will not break?
I'm almost done. To sum up, what does equality? What is the difference between equality and equity? Equality is the end goal. I mean, we all are looking forward to equal society, which essentially means that men and women are people of all genders are treated equally, and there is no differences in the way that the laws apply to a certain set of people as opposed to a different another set of genders. Equity is just the means to get there. We all our laws and our constitution has provided certain means to get there, but how it applies to us in our daily lives, what we need to do to understand these laws and to ensure that they are strongly that they are being strongly used and are not forgotten, forms part of the equity passage. So I hope that it's something that you take away. That's one of the big takeaways from this conversation, which essentially means that we all have that, all the tools are here, and how we actually get to do that is something that we all need to be doing together. It's like, how many engineers does it take to put the light bulb on? I don't know. It depends on what kind of electricity regulations are there and what kind of things are there. The electricity is there, the bulb is there, the wire is hanging and the switch is right there. But how many of you are going to be actually screwing the bulb there and turning the light on? It depends on the actual work that we put in. Yes, ma'am, you had a few questions, you said?
Yes, ma'am. You were talking about an example where property of a man was shared by three of his sons and a daughter and his wife.
Yes.
So all of the five would get an equal share of the man's property. Now, the mother, the missus of the owner of the property,
right,
where she takes one part of the property, does she have the discretion of, passing on that share to any of her one son? Does she have the
yes, she
discretion
does.
to pass
Yes.
to anybody? Or does that have to be equally shared among the rest of the folk?
It again, a lot of this depends on whether they leave a will or not. So if the man doesn't leave a will at all, everything gets equally shared by the man's partner or wife, legal partner, and his kids in an equal way. And the partner can then, the legal partner can decide how she will be splitting her share of the property amongst the kids. But if the man leaves a will saying that, X percentage of my property goes to my legal partner, and the Y percentage of my property can be divided equally amongst all my kids, then again, it depends on if the legal partner decides to leave a will saying that all of my property goes to one of my kid, then she has the right to do that.
So she can decide on the part of the property what she holds, right?
Yes,
if she decides to.
Yes, she can.
Part it only with one of her sons, then she can go ahead.
Yes, she can go ahead and do that. But that is also, there are like legal obligations that need to be fulfilled. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I will not be able to answer this accurately, but there are the other kids will have to give up their share in the property, or essentially have to say that we will not be contesting for parts of that property.
Okay, okay. Ma'am, since independence, like it was 75 years of independence, still we're talking about equity and equality. How many more years are we going to talk about this? The 75 years, it has given a drastic change in the attitude of people. Or are we going to talk about this for another 75 years and then we keep saying, like, as we say, India is a developing country for past 25 years. Are we going to still talk about this for another 30, 50 years?
So I'm a bit of an I want to be a bit of an optimist here, and say that the our courts and our society in general has been waking up, has have been educating themselves and becoming more aware of the kind of um, laws that govern us and what we can do to establish a just and equal society. But I think the problem also lies in how much we as a society are holding ourselves behind. And part of the reason is also because of a lack of awareness and a lack of education, um, because of which this inequality breeds into the system. Um, and I the one of the most simplest examples that I would like to take out, this is one of the examples that I love pointing out. So in 1952, when our first election was happening, one of the things that they started doing well before India became a republic is to go around enrolling people to vote. And they had to literally go with pen and paper to every village, to every house in every village and every state, enrolling the people to vote and trying to figure out how many people are actually there who are eligible to vote in this country. And one of the problems that they faced at that point, and this is 1950s, one of the problems that they faced at that point was that a lot of women refused to give their names. So this was more predominantly North India, but even in Southern India, a lot of women, they don't call themselves by their names. They refer to themselves as wife of Sharma, daughter of X, Y, and Z, or sister of ABC. And the amount of effort that the electoral officials had to go in to actual names and to the campaigns that they had to run to get their actual names to register them as part of the voter list was incredible. They were actually running advertisement campaigns. They've got these women who are part of, elected officials who are women to come and talk to them and to tell them that you need to do this and this has to be in your own name. You cannot be seen as this XYZ or ABC. You're not the sister of or the wife of. You have a name and you need to register with that name. And, the kind of efforts that went into ensuring that they were included as part of the voter list. They were included as part of members of society who had a voice was incredible. And from that to here, when we have one of the highest voting percentages amongst women today in our society, are the number of women who have bank accounts, the number of women who have financial independence to a certain degree, financial independence, and the ability to own uh, cash, to have money and to be able to spend the money as they wish, has increased significantly from that point in time. So yes, there are smaller victories, but you know, at the same time, there are also many ways that we keep slipping down the equality index and this is surely because of the amount of misinformation out there and our refusal to progress as far as society is concerned, as a refusal to stand up to society and say, hey, this is not right, and this is not something that I'm going to be doing. Simple things like giving dowry or taking dowry. It doesn't matter how you frame it, it's dowry. Whether it's going to be a fancy car that is being given at a big wedding, or a or a bike that is being given by the people who work in the house. It's the same thing. By domestic helpers is the same thing. Dowry is dowry. So the societal change is much more necessary at this point rather than just laws and regulations being changed.
Agree. Well said, madam.
Yeah.
Well, there are umpteen factors that contributes to this gender inequality. Now, out of all these legs, which you think is the one which takes more weightage? Again, you think is it the society which takes more weightage among all these factors?
Yes, I really do think it's societal pressures that hold women back more than anything else. As a society, in our country, and the reason that I'm saying is because the laws are all there. It's 75 years, close to 75 years back, our the members in a constituent assembly made sure that almost every law that we could that could be given to ensure equality within the society and to ensure equal rights within the society was given. And we were one of the pioneers in that. Like US still doesn't have an equal rights amendment. US Constitution still doesn't guarantee complete equal rights under law for both the genders. We do, and we did that in 1950. And we granted universal suffrage much before any of the other colonial countries that came out of from independence did. And you just have to see around us, all our neighbors, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Burma, Bangladesh. Bangladesh is far ahead of us in many of the ways, but the kind of things that hold these countries back is the lack of laws that ensure that kind of gender equality within as part of their provisions, and we have all of that. So it's just a matter of knowing what our rights are. It's just a matter that these rights are already guaranteed to us and how to implement them in our daily life. We and a part of it is also a refusal to talk out loud. Women are always said, don't ask for more, don't talk about money, don't talk about property. It's not nice for kids to talk about property with their parents. It is not nice to this the one of my biggest points of contention often with people is that as kids, I'm assuming all of the people here are 18 and above.
Yes.
And about will, talking about property rights, talking about a living will, talking about
Anybody else has got questions, I think I'll give the chance. Now, you were telling me like society makes a major part, or out of a lot of factors, societal attitudinal change, is a major contribution in having gender equity. If I make a statement as women are against their own gender in their growth, what is your opinion on it?
I wouldn't agree to that as a blanket. Women tend to underestimate the ability or undermine the ability of other women to do something or to perform their duty to the society, to as a working woman or whatever it is. And a lot of it is also because of how of the kind of position that they think women should take in society. I had a lot of belief that as if you are part of a family, this is how you need to behave, and this is how you need to do things, and this is how you need to this thing, and the incentives to break that kind of the barriers that hold women back, whether it is barriers that are set by the society itself or barriers that are set by other women in the society, the incentive to break that is much too high in a lot of in a lot of cases. But there are also people who do break those barriers, and there are also people who push other women to educate themselves and to tell to make them see that the kind of attitudes that they bring into a family or the kind of attitudes they bring into a conversation will and can potentially be hurtful. Whether it is mothers allowing their daughters to work, because it's not safe, because you're working in an environment with other men, or whether it is family, the in-laws preventing a daughter-in-law from working, or forcing payments, dowry payments for whatever reason, or generally looking down upon girl child because girl child is a burden and all those things. There are ways to push through it and to try and start conversations that help change ideas about these kinds notions about these kinds of attitudes. At the most basic, it's how you start a conversation and whether that conversation has the ability to go somewhere or not, and whether it how much of your effort you need to put into having that conversation or continuing that conversation.
Thank you. Guys, we're all in the students, if you have questions, you can come up and chat. Students in both the departments, if you have any questions, please type in your questions. You can even
I wish my kids were this disciplined about not talking back or arguing. I have more energy during the day.
Well, I think they're long silence. I don't think they have any questions.
Yes, they're all in a holiday mood. I mean, it's understandable.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. You had a good insight into even a beginner if he or she joins a job, like what is that they have to demand in terms of their salaries and other benefits.
Yes.
Today is only the gender gap by stepping up. It was nice to have good awareness on the strength of women in armed forces. So on the whole, like this morning was really interesting and it was good input, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It was a
Thank you very
pleasure.
much for making us
Yeah, it was a
this
pleasure.
eye-opening
Yeah,
session.
it was an absolute pleasure talking to this. I hope. I mean, this. I hope the silence does not mean that they have tuned out of the conversation. And I hope that at least some of what I said is worthy of a conversation, maybe outside this arena. And my email is there for anybody who wants to reach out and who wants to further this conversation, maybe on a different platform. So let me know, if you want to talk further. But it was an absolute pleasure. It's something that's really close to my heart, and something that I love talking about. So I'm really glad to have been given the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Ipa, you have a formal closure?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. One second, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for answering questions and for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us. We request the participant to switch on the camera for a photo shoot. Request the participants to switch on for a few minutes. This is Madhukar.
Guys, you can enable your video for some time.
Ma'am, you have to stop the sharing, ma'am. Only then it will be visible.
Ipa, is it done?
Yes, it's done. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. At the end of the section, I would like to thank the chief guest. And here, freedom cannot be achieved unless women have been independent from all form of maltreatments. As you said, for women, social business are high and education is premium for them. They must have to change. Thinking of society is also changing slowly. More and more number of women are getting quality education. But the true meaning of women empowerment will be achieved when gender inequality will be eliminated. We need to give equal opportunity to women for equal pay, equal respect as equal to men. We look forward to such a nation. On behalf of the Hindustan College of Engineering and Technology and Department of Computer Application, I thank you for your initiative presentation, ma'am. The presentation which you gave today is really subjective and informative. People definitely got a lot of information and inspiration from you, ma'am. At your age, you have really done a wonderful job, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for joining. Sir, thank you very much, sir. Sharnasundram, sir, are you inside the meet, sir? Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining.